In this lesson, we're going to be looking at something called a VLOOKUP, and we need to use the data that comes with this lesson to import that data. Now, as we showed in the last video, that when we import data, it actually comes in as a table. And you may have experience, or you might, as we go through these, you might begin to experience problems with querying those systems because they do come in as tables. And that's one of the issues with the new way that Excel imports data, because it automatically imports it as a table. And the one advantage of the old wizard is it didn't import it as a table. So what we're going to need to do is try to pull the data in as normal, but then simply resave it as raw data and then delete everything else that we don't need, so we get to the raw data we have. Equally, we have got, if I click down here, we can jump through all of these. We've got quite a few tabs that are available to us. I mean, we've done a lot of work in a short space of time. So if I click on those, you can see we've done loads of tabs. So shortly, we'll shift to a new lessons spreadsheet simply to lighten the load on this one, because we've got, you know, a million numbers just on that one sheet. And so we can overload our system a little bit too much. So we need the table. So first of all, I'm going to do what we've done before, get table from file, from text file. Now you should have put the lookup data within your Excel lessons area and then simply import the data. It's going to come up with a number of things regarding that, but to be honest, we don't need to worry about that. Let's just load the data, and that's going to pull in this lookup sheet, and the sheet we're interested in is the one along. So all I'm going to do is select all the data in this simply by clicking and dragging. This should be second nature, and think of all those lessons back when you probably didn't know how to even do that, and now we're doing a load of complex things. So then I'm going to right click and I'm going to copy. I'm then going to go to the VLOOKUP tab, right click, and just paste the values. Now this is this second one in, it's just got the little 1, 2, 3, and that tells us just to paste the values, no formatting, nothing else. And we have a wide range of choices there. If I'm not too sure, I can actually simply say paste special, and then that will give me a menu, and I can look through the list and choose just values. But it works the same way. So I'm just going to paste in the values, click OK, and that's there. Now, Excel is slightly unusual to almost every other program, and you probably got used to that, but it is an unusual program, and the copy isn't permanently in memory. It's only active whilst we've got these ants going around the outside. So if I click over here and I right click, I can still see I can copy paste. But let's now go to here, to the lookup, and just press escape. So there's now no ants going around. Now if I go back to there and right click, you'll notice there's no paste option. So paste inside Excel is only active when you've got the ants going around the outside. Now we don't need this anymore. Everything we want is on this sheet. So all we're going to do is right click and delete this sheet. That stops it keeping that connection to the CSV file that we've just opened. So I'm going to delete that, and it's going to warn me, and yes, got rid of it, and that's perfect. So we've got the raw data here, and that's all we wanted. So all I'm going to do is choose a sheet. Sorry, I should have explained that, and just simply double clicked. Now, if you're very astute, you might have noticed that this is the same data that we used some time ago. And the only difference is I have put everything in name order. And we'll look at how I did that later on. But at this moment in time, we need it to be in some form of order. In fact, the way we've got this data set up, I'm going to make some changes to it before we do the VLOOKUP. And there will be logical reasons obviously for doing this. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to go to this first column, and I'm going to right click and delete it. I'm then going to take my B column, right click, cut. Got the ants. Now cut is different to copy. Copy creates an exact replica of what you've got. Cut removes what you've selected and puts it somewhere new. So what I'm going to try and do is insert cut cells. And if I do that, they seem to have swapped. They haven't. The B that was here was deleted. The B that was there then was inserted as A, and A became B. But it moved so quickly it just looked like they had swapped around. And that's really useful for what I've got there. So all we're going to do now is we're going to use a VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP is short for vertical lookup. And that just means that it's going to use the columns. It's just going to look up and down a column. And we're going to stipulate it's actually going to, by default, look at the first column. And then we've got to tell it which column it's going to return the value from. And that will all make sense as we go through this. So I'm going to start up here and I'm going to put equals VLOOKUP. Now, as I type that, you can see the VLOOKUP comes up and then the options. The first thing it wants to do is look up value. Now, it sounds flash, but all it means is, what are we looking for? Now, I can notice that what we've got here is Glover. So what I want to do is I want to look up Glover in speech marks. Remember, it's got to be in speech marks. Where are we looking up? Well, we're looking up here. So I'm going to choose all of that, and that's there. Where is our answer? What are we looking for it to return? Now, this is a number, and it simply references the column where the data is that we want to look for. Now, that's no relationship to where it is on the sheet. So the fact that I'm starting at column A, and we've got column A, B, C, the number here references the column of interest inside this table array, this group of data. So this first column is 1, column 1. And that would be column 1 if it was in column A or in column S. It wouldn't matter. This is column 1. So I'm just going to return column 1 just to see what it comes up with. And I'm going to press comma. Now we've got two choices here. One is to say, right, we want to get either, well, it could be Glover, but it's the closest thing to Glover. If you can't find Glover, take the thing that would be just before where Glover would be. We'll have a look at that in a second. But we've got exact match, and I want to find Glover. So I'm going to go for exact match, and it tells me that must therefore be the word false. So I'm going to put the word false in. Now, again, it doesn't matter if it's uppercase or lowercase, but I like to stick to how it shows me. So we do that. And it's found Glover. So it's got that piece of information for us. Now, we could vary this easily and everything else. So we could add an if statement, and we'll look at that in a moment. But that's all it's doing. All it's doing is saying, is there Glover in that list? Now, let's change this name Glover. We know that we've got Glover, then we've got green. So if I put Glopper, I get NA. There's no such data of that form. What if I change this now to true? What if I now say, no, okay, it doesn't have to be an exact match, approximately Glover. What's it going to come back with? Well, it comes back with George, so it's coming back with there. So the one I've got, Glopper, the first one it's finding nearest to that is this George. It's stopping there and going, well, I think it's George. So it's estimating where the data is and is giving us the nearest one to that. So it's a rough guide. So how else could we use this? Well, let's be a little bit cleverer on this. Let's remember that we can go to data and then use data validation. Let's remember that we can choose a list and that we can tell it where that list is, this column here. And I'll press enter. Not going to worry about any input messages or errors, and that's all we've put in there now. And this has got the drop down, just so I don't forget where it is. Remember, I'm going to put a border around it, just because it's easy to lose it. So I now know I can go there. So what I can now do is say, well, this is a VLOOKUP equals VLOOKUP. And what I want to know now is not do they exist, but what's their first name? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, don't look up specifically a name, but look up for the name that's in that cell there. There isn't one at the moment. So it's just going to reference the contents of L4. What's it looking up? Well, it's looking up in this table here. So that's good. And then where's the answer? Well, remember the last names are in column 1. So that would be 1. But the first names are in column 2. So I'm looking for it in column 2. And because I'm actually looking at a specific last name, I want that person's name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put false because I want it to be an exact match. So press enter, and obviously NA because at the moment it's looking up nothing. But if I choose Burton, it's going to tell me Janie. And if I go down to scroll down all the way, Sullivan, Connor. And if I look down here and I've got Sullivan, it's Connor. So it's actually showing me the data that's already in this table. So I can pull in lots of data. And that's really the VLOOKUP. It's seemingly a complex function, but it's really not. We could tidy this up a little bit more. Let's say that we take all our data. Now remember, we keep skipping the headers because they can cause it a bit of a problem. We just want the raw data. But I could put into here person database. Now I can't have spaces, we remember that. So what I'm going to put is person DB. That's nice. Person DB works fine, which means I can now change this data range here to person, and there it is. And Excel's perfectly happy with that. So we're using the name ranges, we're using our lists, and we're using the VLOOKUP to look up the data we want. We're using cell referencing to tie across, and that's really powerful. That means that we can look up any data on here that we want to. It doesn't matter what we're trying to do. Every time I change this first column, it will allow me to see the next column or any part of this table that I want to. And if I decided to move this person DB anywhere else on the sheet, the VLOOKUP will keep that relationship going. It's not about it being in column A, this is column 1 because it's the first column of the VLOOKUP table array. And that's it. We're going to look at the variation on the VLOOKUP in the next lesson, something called the HLOOKUP. So I'll see you in that lesson.